Tears of the Prophets is the final episode of Season 6 of Deep Space Nine, and we kick off with Sisko visiting some Bajoran kids outside the temple. There's a festival going on, which is good for everyone, but Odo.
Someone has to maintain order on the promenade.
You arrested a Vedic.
Though he did bring this on himself. He arrested the guy for fundraising for flood victims on the promenade, which is against the law, and Odo was torn between knowing Kira would disapprove and the impartial upholding of the law.
He chose poorly.
Meanwhile, Sisko is being awarded the Christopher Pike Medal of Valor, but after that, Ross gives the great news. They're going to listen to Sisko and finally take this war to the Dominion, not the Romulans have gotten into the fight. And they want Sisko to plan the invasion of Cardassia. That won't be easy. Coming up with a theme for the invasion is always hard. Should we go with Under the Sea or Let It Snow? Both have their pros and cons. After the titles, Worf and Dax return from the holosuite, late, to the irritation of Bashir, who notes they don't look like they were exercising or anything else aerobic before you jump to conclusions. Now, they're considering having a baby to birth and raise before you jump to conclusions again. I know, Worf looks hungry. Never mind. Speaking of Klingons, Martok is hearing Sisko's plan, an underdefended system named Chintaka, which he likes. He doesn't like going in there with the Romulans, though. They're arrogant, duplicitous, and they all have the same haircuts. Meanwhile, Damar reveals to Weyoun why Chintaka is underdefended. It's not. There are new autonomous weapons platforms that can help fill out the ranks now that they need to devote some of their forces against the Romulans. But they can barely gloat over that before Dukat walks through the door, the first either has seen him since he went mad on DS9 after Damar shot Zial. So, how is madness working out for you, Dukat?
I don't hold you responsible for Ziel's death. You may have fired the phaser, but it was Benjamin Sisko who forced your hand.
So, working out well, I see. That's good. Have you thought about dressing like Napoleon? Because if I go crazy, it's the top of my list to dress like Napoleon.
All I need is a certain Bajoran artifact. One of the many the Cardassians appropriated during the occupation.
It belongs in a museum. Crap, I honestly didn't intend to put 2 Last Crusade references in here. Dukat says it's the way to bring the reinforcements through from the Gamma Quadrant. And while we think on that, the Romulans and Klingons are arguing at the war meeting, where this Romulan seems intent to start a whole new war. Sisko has to hold Martok back from just stabbing this guy when he suggests putting Klingons in zoos. But the senator is convinced the real plan should be to continue to play a more defensive war instead of trying to advance on Cardassia like Sisko plans. But Starfleet's view is that a war of attrition can never work. The material disadvantage won't manifest. What were their ships and Jem'Hadar breeding facilities keeping up with? Okay, I admit I don't know if it's called Jem'Hadar breeding facilities. I don't really think I want to know what it's called. Anyway, the point is that it's unspoken in this, not only that the material wouldn't be an issue for them, but also there's the fact that Dominion forces cannot become war-weary. There's no letters home to Ma and Pa that a ship was destroyed and someone was lost to create tension and anxiety and a demand for this whole thing to stop. No. All the lives in jeopardy exist to die in glory to the Founders. The last Jem'Hadar, holding nothing but a rock, will keep fighting until the fat lady sings.
Here's to the losers, bless them all.
Or whoever we can manage to book. Vic points out the reality. They lost Dax to Worf a long time ago. This is just making it real for them. Now it's time to move on. Gotta learn to take a hint.
The Sisko is a Bajor.
Any hint at all, no matter how subtle it might be. Well, this is a problem. Seems the prophets don't want Sisko to leave, that it's dangerous, but they seem to have trouble elaborating on that point. That's a complication in this. Remember, this isn't like a normal war here. Part of what is obstructing the Dominion's efforts is the presence of the prophets here, them sticking their nose into things. Plus you got Dukat off doing his thing now. This is nothing that normal military strategy ever has to deal with, believe you me. I mean, do you think the stuff going on with Ukraine pushing into Russia right now is going to get complicated by anything like this? Huh? That some kind of a being is going to step in? As amusing as it might be, There's not going to be some moment as Moscow is getting attacked by drones that Putin is rushing through the Kremlin only to get confronted by some being who's wrapped in dusty bandages to express their disapproval. You have failed me, Putin. You were to restore my empire. No, I am on the cusp of victory. Too late. Your soul belongs to the proletariat now. And just sucks it out with green energy or something, whatever the evil form is. Ancient spirits of Marxism, transform this decayed form into Stalin, the ever-living! I'm not saying it's impossible that might happen. It's just that if I see him out there like Lord Sauron with a huge hammer in one hand and a giant sickle in the other mowing down ranks of troops, I'm going to at least look for another video source on that. Well, Starfleet intelligence knows about the weapons platforms, but thinks they won't be operational for a couple of days, so the attack is in the morning. That still leaves the business with the Prophets, though. And after listening, Ross lays it out there. Be a Starfleet captain or be an emissary, not both. Starfleet's official policy is stay in your lane. Meanwhile, on Cardassia...
Gentlemen, I hope I'm not interrupting.
What is it now, Dukat?
I found it. Behold, the key to victory.
Always in the last place you look. Dukat explains that to take down the Bajorans, they need to take down their gods.
How do you fight a god?
I'll show you. You see, we have an ally we never knew we had.
He's a little small, isn't he? I was going to eat that mummy. Well, he cracks it open. Did you forget to adjust for daylight savings? Because that screws things like this up. Well, while he looks and sounds funny now, we return to Kira Noto. Seems he's been trying to keep her from running into him because he presumes the fight means that they're over now. She sets him straight. He was wrong, but she's not mad now and wants to spend time with him before heading out to fight Cardassians. We can assume it went well because she seems in a fine mood the next day as they all leave. Even Jake goes to cover the story, with Dax staying behind to command the station.
Wish I was going with you.
You are. In here.
That's sweet. Unless Klingon anatomy means he just tapped his testicles. So, off the fleet goes to make history, with no idea Damar is trying to rush through completion of the platforms early. To be fair, even Damar isn't sure he's going to pull it off, and Weyoun is downright cynical. So, they fight, and they fight, and they fight, and they fight, and unfortunately things take a nasty turn, and it's not over yet. There's Dukat's plan with the Pa Wraith.
All this talk of God strikes me as nothing more than superstitious nonsense.
You believe that the Founders are gods, don't you?
That's different.
In what way?
The Founders are gods.
Can't argue with that. Don't want to get stoned to death. Meanwhile, Bashir says to Dax that the tech he's given her is causing tech to happen, so if she and Worf want to have a baby, all they have to do is tech. So long as they don't do it in the tech, obviously. That's not biologically possible. After thanking Bashir for being such a good, platonic, friend-zone friend, she says she's going to the shrine. Kira had said a prayer for her, and she wants to follow it up with thanks. This doesn't go too well.
Dukat.
I don't want to nitpick, but this seems a lot worse than fundraising on the promenade. Dukat then opens up the orb and dumps all the Pa Wraith goop into it, turning into coal or something. The wormhole has a convulsion and Sisko senses some disturbance in the Force. It's not a good time for it either. Garrick figured out that the weapons platforms don't have their own power generator, and O'Brien has tracked it back to the central power source so they can shut them all down. Kira takes command, and they fly towards the identified asteroid, blasting at it to no avail. So O'Brien suggests making it look to sensors like the power source is actually a Federation ship, make its own weapons platforms target it. This works, and they're able to then take out the now powerless weapons platforms. Klingons then begin landing on the surface, all news that has Weyoun right pissed off. Well, imagine how he then feels when he finds out that rather than restoring their access to the wormhole, Dukat has sealed it shut.
I'm well aware things didn't turn out quite the way I planned.
Operation Kratos seems to have been a misfire. Dukat assures him that taking the prophets out of the equation's a huge win, a great consolation prize to having however many oodles of armadas to bring into battle. Well, it is a psychological victory at the very least. The Bajorans are extremely anxious, and a little girl pleads with Sisko to bring the prophets back. He says he'll try, but right now they need to see to Dax, who is suffering from a case of whatever the hell that was. Possibly hellfire, actually. Bashir manages to save the Dax symbiote, but Jadzia is too badly injured. Worf has a chance to be with her at the end and cries out like a Klingon had passed. Sisko then has a private moment with her remains before the funeral about their friendship and about how much he needs her help now that this problem with the prophets has happened. So, he has to get away. Take some time to come back at this when he's ready. But there's one notable difference. He started the season with Dukat at his desk and now finishes with Kira at it. But as Dukat noted, he'd left his baseball behind as a sign that he was going to come back for it. Now, he's taken his baseball with him and heads back to New Orleans, cleaning clamshells as the season ends. A sign he may never go back. Leaving us with only one thought. Should have gone with Under the Sea as the theme. Damn it. Tears of the Prophets has a number of things happening that make discussing it difficult, compounded by the fact that the presence of the prophets is very divisive. The decision to lean into the unique angle that Sisko as the emissary offers is brave and risky, especially after killing off a beloved character. Now, for all my exasperation with her at times, I like Jadzia. I assume by now, if you've watched enough of my show, you can tell when I'm frustrated because I like them and they're doing X thing. Am I frustrated because I don't like them and would like them to piss off somewhere else? I mean, she could have died in worse ways, yes. I'm betting Tasha Yar was a lesson in avoiding some of the pitfalls. But still, I'm not a fan of this choice. You can debate on how much such deaths should go, but considering Dinobot on Beast Wars, I think when considered, a death that feels like it completes the arc of the character's journey just makes the moment powerful, memorable, and does service to someone that people are emotionally invested in. Sure, I get the point about naturalism and life being cut short and all that, but there's something far more satisfying to feel this sense in one way or another that justice has been done for the character, that we have gotten all out of them, if you will, followed them on their emotional journey to the finish. The fact that this just comes essentially out of nowhere to no agenda, it robs it of the power that she deserves. The fact that Worf is not the one to bring Dukat to justice for this, that's just further salt in the wound. But getting back to Sisko, what's apropos of this is that by taking this path, the show is choosing to lean into his unique role. It is often common for a religious or spiritual individual to go into exile or isolation and to then return with wisdom, to meditate far from distractions, or to be metaphorically naked before the world, far from the places of power or protection or isolation that's so vital to gaining the understanding that leads to their teachings. Sisko is a man in the clothes of a lowly laborer, scrubbing clams alone in an alley in silence, does close the episode with him beginning a journey of the spirit. It's a bold choice, and I have to admit, that's probably, as silly as it might sound, my favorite part of this episode. I honestly want to like it more than I do, but the fact that I give this a score of 5 out of 10 probably says it all. This feels like what I generally expect from Deep Space Nine, but it's not a particularly impressive specimen. It has to fit a lot in, and a whole bunch of perfectly serviceable bits adds up to an episode that, quality-wise, is perfectly serviceable, but not really special. Considering the events that happen here, I realize how that sounds, but I can't help it. The episode does not bear the weight of the events. I actually feared this might happen, which is why I did something I normally don't do and didn't watch the episode before getting started, because I didn't want to have repetition dull the edges to it. I remember feeling disappointed in the past, and I didn't want to take any advantage away from it. I wanted it to impact me as fully as it could, but it didn't really have much of an oomph to it. Knowing that Jadzia would die, maybe that's what diminished the impact partially. But seriously, though, I don't think if it did that it was much. Man, I loved Deep Space Nine. It was such a great show, full of so many talented performers and creators. And it was a show that was willing to take chances on things simply for the sake of taking the chance, not because they were desperate, but just because that's what you need to do sometimes to really find out what you can do. The show was brave and bold, and I don't like having to say this about their season 6 finale. It feels like this should have been an episode that could have knocked it out of the park, and instead has settled for a double. I wish it could live up to the potential of the ideas here, I do. I guess the indictment of the episode is the fact that the part that sticks with me the most in an episode that does so much is Sisko the Emissary washing clams. The episode just didn't become what it could have.
But you're no longer angry with me?
But you were wrong to arrest the Vedic.
I see.